you run your own freelance business? Or maybe you're thinking about picking up some business on the side? Well, then you need FreshBooks. FreshBooks is the quickest and easiest way to get invoices out to your clients. It's easy to use. It works anywhere, available from any device on the desktop, iPhone, iPad, Android, and all of your data is backed up and secure. And it makes it really easy to get organized and get paid. You'll be tracking time, logging expenses, and invoicing your clients in no time. You can also save time billing, freeing up several days per month to focus on the work that you love, and you get paid faster. FreshBooks customers are paid on average 5 days faster because there's a link on the invoice that says pay me now. And it's a great way to grow your business. Plus, FreshBooks is offering a 30-day trial. That's right, 30-day trial if you try them out. So go to gofreshbooks.com/devchat and enter devchat in the How Did You Hear About Us section. Once again, for a 30-day trial, go to gofreshbooks.com/devchat and enter devchat in the How Did You Hear About Us section. Hey everybody, and welcome to another My JavaScript Story. This week we're talking to Gant LaBorde. Gant, do you want to say hello?
Yeah, hey everybody.
Now, have you been on JavaScript Jabber?
No, I have not. Not yet.
But you're a semi-regular on React Native Radio.
Correct. Yeah, I've done a few podcasts, but I'm hoping to expand the podcasting in 2018.
Nice. Very good. Yep. And let's see if I remember this right. You work for Infinite Red?
That is correct, yeah.
And you all have a project called Ignite, which is I don't know if I want to call it a framework, but
yeah,
it's a toolkit and a very complete framework for putting together apps in React Native.
Yeah, React Native sort of dumps you off in the middle of the desert with, a pile of clothes and a jug of water. There's been a lot of people trying to help out those who come after us, and Ignite has sort of been the solution that we've used. It's we ship apps constantly, being a consulting company,
right?
And we're 100% remote, and we're asynchronous. So we just simply use open source and sort of open like templating and working with everybody to give a way to say like what our best practices are. And we work on those internally, and they sort of pop back out as boilerplates that are consumed by Ignite.
Makes sense. Yeah, I've actually installed it and given it a try. Of course, I haven't gone so far as to actually build anything with React Native yet, but
well, it's getting easier, fortunately. We have a boilerplate we're working on called Bowser, which is going to be the next iteration. And what it does is it really cleans up the amount of boilerplate necessary in order to ship a production-ready app. Fortunately, the ecosystem's sort of grown substantially in some really cool ways.
Right. That's cool.
Yeah, it's weird because, so many cool things came out of React. I mean, just Redux, like the rest of the world sort of like quakes from the advances in JavaScript. And what I really like is, as it's continuing to move forward, there's some really cool tools that are coming out of it. There's some great ways that people have established on how to really deliver a quality app in JavaScript.
Yeah, well, and it's interesting too because a lot of the ideas that came out of React got incorporated into Angular 2, into Vue.js, and then the folks that are working on like NGRX in Angular. I spend a lot more time talking to Angular folks. That all basically got taken from the ideas inside of Redux, and so we're seeing a lot of this movement. It permeates more than just, we can do this in JavaScript to we're going to do this in these other systems because it makes a ton of sense and solves some of the problems we have.
Yeah, it's really sort of unfragmented JavaScript, where people are able to look across the pond and say, that's working, let's do it.
Absolutely. So Anyway, it's funny because we get off on these tangents, but that's not really what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about you. So,
wow.
let's just jump in and get your story. And, I think we're going to wind up coming back around to some of this. But let's go back to the very beginning. How did you get into programming?
Well, my dad is the most anti-computer person known to mankind. I know a lot of people just saw, their own dads, but he called me over because he couldn't watch cable for 3 days. And he's like, "Can you please fix this?" I pressed the power button on the cable box and he's like, "Oh, you fixed it." And he didn't think he did anything wrong. He just thought that it was, my fault for not taking less than 3 days to come over and press the power button. So as a kid, you can imagine we really just didn't have anything to do with computers. My dad's a very smart, kind of like with history and the sciences, but he just didn't want computers. And fortunately, his work sort of forced him to have one. And being, just like everybody else, I was trying to see if I can get games on there. Mm-hmm. That this computer could not support games. It was the cheapest piece of crap ever. And then fortunately enough, my neighbor came over, pulled up some stuff on the computer and made it say, "Hello, Gant." In text, basically, "Hello, world."
Right.
And it blew my mind. It is the first time that instead of consuming electronics, I'd actually seen somebody interact with it. Mm-hmm. And I was like, "You have to show me everything." Right. And it was amazing because, my neighbor, to this day, we're still friends. And actually now we're coworkers. He got out of computers. Uh-huh. And now he's back into it. So I actually, I mentored him, and now he's working with us at Infinite Red, and he's doing amazing. But I mean, if he had stayed in it, I'd be taking lessons from him for sure.
That's funny. I have a few friends like that wound up in different fields. Yeah, not in computers. They were the ones that were doing all that stuff, and yeah.
Yeah, it's really funny because I mean, if you think about it, as a child, I was probably like 10 or 11 years old, but having somebody manage DOS, log in, write quick basic, have a hello world, and then have enough to wherewithal to get you started.
Right.
It was like, that's a serious level there. And I just, the people who are out there who stuck with it, those are like the titans in programming today. So talk about missed opportunity, but still, I'm really happy to have him as a friend, and what he did honestly altered my life.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, you're playing around, you're learning the programming stuff, doing some basic. How did you get into JavaScript?
Well, fortunately, basic stuck around enough. I was with the AOL world, and AOL world wanted Visual Basic, which was the next step. Uh-huh. And then I was hooked on programming pretty hard. And once you're hooked on programming, it's always a hop, skip, and jump to web.
Right.
But I can tell you this. I started off with back-end web in early 2000s, which was ASP. Mm-hmm. Which was like the easiest to get. It was like how PHP, kind of got popular. It was like really easy to get started, and there wasn't really that much to it. But also around early 2000s, JavaScript started to really make its moves,
Right.
And if you wanted to do menus, which were really important for some reason, you needed to learn JavaScript. So I bought probably like an O'Reilly or a Sam's Teach Yourself in 21 Days JavaScript book. Mm-hmm. And I dare say, that's a completely different JavaScript than what we experience today. That was just abysmal. It works in Netscape, doesn't work in IE, kind of that whole
Yep.
world. there's no solutions for anything. Nobody's got code out there.
Yeah.
You're just happy that you figured out, how to make it not, break 90% of the time.
Mm-hmm.
And that was my JavaScript experience, which explains why I ran from it screaming. I was really just anybody who did JavaScript when it first came out, and the saying JavaScript has as much to do with Java as a carnival has to do with a car.
Uh-huh. Yep.
It's just it was JavaScript in name only. Mm-hmm. And it was just a mess when it first came out, and all the DOMs and the Internet Explorer features only. I didn't stick around with JavaScript for very long. I had to run away for a bit, and I went back to back end and said, whatever, I'm just going to do PHP, database, desktop apps.
Mm-hmm. A lot of us used that coping mechanism back in the day.
Yeah, it was important, right? I mean, you had to find some place where your code could run.
Yep.
You couldn't be that guy who said, come check this out, and nothing worked.
Yeah, exactly.
It was very unacceptable a long time ago to say that, by the way. It's like, let me play, what's your favorite song on guitar? Let me try to strum through it real quick. Nobody sits around for that, right? You're alone.
Yep.
And I made my trek back to JavaScript many, many years later,
mm-hmm.
Through, of course, jQuery, which brought some kind of, consistency, dependability back to JavaScript. And then JavaScript's gotten a full head of steam and just excelled into, a position where it can't be ignored.
Right.
And I mean, I know that's not a love story, right?
No, but yeah.
But it's becoming one, whether it be, I'm just, what's that complex where you have to love your captors?
Oh, Stockholm Syndrome?
Yeah.
Yep.
And then, that explains why Rubyists and JavaScript people constantly fought, it's just there's this, but they're all merging now, and there's new higher order programming and concepts and ES6, ES7. It's just getting there,
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. It's really interesting to see how it's changed because, I got into web development seriously as a career in 2005, 2006.
Oh, nice.
Doing Ruby on Rails. And I mean, it was this is such a pain. I have to code in all this stuff for Internet Explorer, and then I have to code in all this stuff for Netscape. I got to code in all this stuff for any other browser I want to use. And then jQuery came along and just made all that go away.
Right. And did you, were you a coffee scripter?
I did CoffeeScript for a while. I've kind of gone back and forth between that and what would you call it? Regular JavaScript, ES5.
Yeah.
And now I'm really digging TypeScript. So
yes, high five on TypeScript, man.
So yeah,
that is definitely I think I've spoken to a lot of people, and there seems to be some competition to TypeScript. Everybody's talking about, this is so much better.
Right.
I don't know, man. I'm really digging TypeScript real hard. So
yeah, well, the thing that gets here's another tangent, right? But the thing that gets me there more than anything else has nothing to do with actually anything that TypeScript really gives you, other than classes. Maybe I really like having object-oriented programming in JavaScript. And yes, I know people are out there going, but you knew that in ES5. No, it's not the same.
No, not even close.
So, I can set up a class, and then I can instantiate a class, and it's pretty seamless, and TypeScript makes that really easy. But the other thing that more than any of the features, any one feature of TypeScript or ES6 or any of the, the superset that TypeScript gives you is the tooling. And the tooling just takes so much of that pain away, because all of a sudden I don't have to think about this stuff. You're returning the wrong type, dummy. it just tells me that. If I structure it wrong, if I leave something out, the tooling that they've built around it, it checks all of that stuff. And so, you use a tool like Visual Studio Code, or you hook it up to your Emacs or Vim setup as a plugin. The TypeScript, I forget what they call it, but it's like the language process thingy. I think that's the official name, the language process thingy.
I remember reading it. Yeah, that's what it was.
But it makes it so seamless to just write it, and it gives me the sanity checks on the fly. And so the strong, it's not strong typing, but you give it the indications on what types are going to be used and things like that. It's just that it does the checking for me, and so I don't have to check it in my head. I get warned when I make a dumb mistake.
Yeah, there's an ACM magazine article that they just released in the latest issue, said XML and JSON are cardboard. And it's kind of an interesting concept. But the idea is that cardboard is essential in industry because you can easily form, it protects, it like packages things and brings them to other places. And then sort of TypeScript is like industrial cardboard, right? Because what you have is that classic, what the hell is going on? And then you find a typo, and you're accessing some part of an object that doesn't even exist because you can't type. I mean, inside of, TypeScript would have told you the second you made that typo.
Yep.
Right. And it's just, that's a whole world of difference. Is like catching that feedback loop that, Rubyists were always in love with, like Pry and all these other tools, getting this immediate way to like get your hands dirty and know that it's going to work when you let go of it. JavaScript always had this weird, I'm going to break the second you look away kind of feel to it. and it's gone in TypeScript. TypeScript brings back this sanity. I don't know if people want to call it a JavaScript babysitter or like a level up or like some kind of thing. But yeah, I feel that when we're implementing it now, when we ship, we don't feel this sort of anxiety. Like when 500 people start using this, what is going to come back and bite us? Yeah, it doesn't come back anymore.
Yep, absolutely. And I mean, there are so many things that just it's seamless. It doesn't interrupt my flow either. So
right, yeah, unless you make a mistake.
Yeah. So we've talked about JavaScript. How did you get into React Native?
Well, we were shipping mobile apps. I was moonlighting for Infinite Red when it was just a small company, and then it started to like pull together all these resources from open source and start to grow into this actual entity that is sort of if you wanted a mobile app and you wanted it written, we were using Ruby Motion and Native. And it's like if you kind of wanted to get into that world, we were the authority. And we were loving Ruby Motion because it really blunted the disgusting sort of underpinnings that you didn't have to look at every day with Native, but you were able to access them and work with them. Right. Well, Ruby Motion, the support for Android was always coming. And it was always under development, but it was a 4-person company. They worked their butts off, but we were building a bigger and bigger business around that tool chain, and it was closed source and we couldn't fix anything. So we had sort of a moment of truth, right? Are we going to go 100% native, or are we going to go into something else? And at that time, React Native was a year old, and they had just announced that they're doing Android, right? I think it was. And we said, let's do a full research and development on React Native, and came back from that R&D with glowing eyes of happiness. Like, we can write native, we can write JavaScript, we can do anything that we need to do, and the code looks exactly the same for both of them. Like, why are we not jumping on this today? And so that's what we did. We jumped straight in with both feet and started delivering our mobile apps with React Native. And the hardest part about it was there was just nobody out there currently open sourcing their stuff. Now it's a different ecosystem by far. And we've really enjoyed, we haven't looked back. It's been fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of things that are really interesting about it. And, I've talked to people about React Native. I've talked to people about NativeScript. I've talked to people about, some of these other interesting JavaScript solutions, much more than, say, Cordova, which operates at a different level. But, yeah, I mean, working through the JavaScript bridge, so it's JavaScript core on iOS, and it's, what is it, V8 on the Android. And the rest of it's native, and that was one of the things that for a long time, I know it's much better now. So if you go and you do something like use Ionic or something, it feels mostly native most of the time, but it's still web interface, and there are still issues that sometimes crop up. Whereas with these others, you can call all the native APIs across the JavaScript bridge and it'll just work. And the layouts are all native. And so it functions mostly like a regular app. And I haven't seen a React Native app where I could tell that it wasn't written in Swift.
Yeah. Well, what's funny is they're able to send all the animations down to native if they're certain animations. Like, there's all these optimizations where they're trying to like blur those lines. Also, the platform ability is a bit more exhaustive. Like, you could go do an Xbox app in React Native.
Oh wow, really?
Apple TV. Like, it's this virtual DOM concept can be transported anywhere. It's just, what native elements do I map to? Even so, it's sort of been done where it's funny. This is the cart horse, I don't know, this is the snake eating itself, perhaps. You have the React Native web, which is you write in React Native and then it renders down to web.
Right. You
which
have
is really
web renderer instead of the native renderer.
Right. What's funny is it comes back to, and so it's sort of like, I like this idea of platforms being at this other level that you can support. And this really gives you that I'm writing the same kind of thing. Just I know where to change it to fit each platform.
Right.
And the funniest part about it is some of the most expensive apps that come our way as a consulting company don't want to look like native apps anymore. That's sort of,
that used to be the big thing, right? That's why people didn't want to use Cordova.
Right, like a skeuomorphism, like back with iOS days where notepads had to look like notepads, right? That died and everybody went flat, right?
Right.
So now that everything's flat, it's your flavor of icons, your flavor of your app, your flavor of that. So now every app that we're building goes through our design team, and the designers build an experience that's specific for your audience, not specific for an iOS or Android audience, specific for your audience. Like, what's the age demographic? What's the sort of feel? What are the color schemes that work for that? And so it's like, I feel like it's almost down to more atomic, like the atomic design is getting more atomic,
right? Because
now it's like, give me your demographic, give me your users, and then let me build an experience for them. And I know that there's always going to be some part where you have to go back to native because everybody on iOS knows to do this. Everybody on Android knows to do that.
Right.
But those sections are getting smaller and smaller, it seems like, as we're sort of moving towards this user experience focused kind of energy. And it's funny because like that's not at all that's not at all what you would think. But the bigger, more expensive stuff, they want to build the story for their users.
Yep.
And then of course there's always the classics where you just want a simple, minimal viable product, right?
Right.
Those are trying to identify what's the fastest path between there, and sometimes even that doesn't tread on native too much at all.
Right. One thing that I'm curious about, we've talked a lot about, the idea of, building the story or building the workflow or, building things in the way that people want to use them. How does React Native really enable you to do that? Or is that more, a level up from React Native?
No, I think React Native's still like creating amazing ways to do it. So Storybook, if you're unfamiliar with it, which I think is, another one of those ideas that's everywhere now, is that React Native has this component, which is like an encapsulation point, sort of like there's another ACM magazine article about how that's Facebook's take on functional programming.
Right.
Right. And so you have these composable pieces of components, and you can actually break an app out into its components, and you can have a team of people. As a matter of fact, I've never seen a junior developer be so net positive as I have with component structures. You can hand them, here's a button, here's all the states it'll have, here's the behavior I expect it to do and the animation it needs.
Right.
And throw them into they have full access to the project, but technically they get this storybook page where they can show all the different states, all the different items, and then they come back to you. And what happens is you put your app into storybook mode or, web page.
Right.
And you click through and look at it, and then you can examine their code. And they've contributed. They came back to you and they had to look up basic documentation. They don't know where that button lands, how it actually operates with global state in either Redux or MobX or MobX state tree or Redux logic. I mean, they don't even understand the differences between those things. And that's what I really like about it, is because that sort of React structure gives a delineation for everybody to kind of work with. And I've heard amazing stories have kind of come in, even from Wix, who've had teams of people who want Redux and teams of people who want MobX. And they just make a small insulation barrier between the two where they can use each other's components, and it doesn't matter what kind of management that they have for those pieces. So we're moving towards reusability, which I guess is sort of the birthplace of let's bring JavaScript into native. And you've got a large company backing, well, it's actually several large company backings now, and a large community of saying, we want to solve this problem to the best of our ability until computer science tells us we can't anymore.
Right. Interesting.
Yeah. And just the advent of, we really care a lot more about user experience. So the pond got a lot bigger. We have a lot more intelligent people discussing the problem.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. So what have you worked on that you are particularly proud of in the JavaScript arena?
Well, I tell you, I've definitely worked with React Native as a core, as contributor. At some point, I was in the top 100. I think I might still be. I don't know, but it's good to give back to the people who sort of make this happen. I don't know how much of that actually goes back into Facebook, but I contribute a lot with React Native. And then the React Native ecosystem and libraries, you'll usually see me either commenting on tickets or merging pull requests. I have quite a lot of access from my experience here.
Right.
And then, of course, Ignite and Reactitron are two fantastic tools that I get to play at least some part in. They're really owned by the community,
right?
In my opinion, but definitely also by everybody who works on it. We code on those ecosystems as open source, simply because that's how Infinite Red works. But also as in, sometimes people will come in and champion tasks, and you won't even know who this person is, where they live, anything about it, and they'll show up, and because the philosophies align, we'll get amazing throughput on these kinds of tools.
Nice.
Yeah, it is a lot of fun.
It sounds like fun. What are you working on now?
I have this new library that I just recently released, and it's called Solidarity. And it's birthed from the concept that we're using bigger and bigger tool chains, right? So React Native itself uses tons of CLIs, requires your environment to be set up correctly. You've got all these other kind of tools out there that require the same thing. And so what I did is I made sort of a DSL around the idea of marking up what the environment necessities are inside of a JSON file.
Okay.
And then it's this package that you can just run, and then it tells you if your machine's good to go. And what happened is I was helping somebody, and I'd lost 2 or 3 hours to find out that they didn't have Xcode set up right.
Oh, no.
And it's a really hard thing. But what are humans terrible at, right? Lists and checking differences. Like, we're good at patterns, but not differences. And what are computers fantastic at? Going over gigantic lists and checking. So I created this thing. It's called, I did a blog post called like Developer Sanity through Solidarity. And what happens is, if you've got a project and it depends on a CLI, a couple other things, having like a database set up, and you just basically you list out these requirements, and then you could semver them. You could say, hey, it just needs to exist, a couple other things. And then you just type Solidarity, and it'll give you a report saying whether or not this machine's good to go. So it's sort of like environment linting, maybe. It's like a good way to but what happens is, if you've got one machine that can run a project, one machine that can't, you just simply can run this command to say, like, hey, what's important and what's the difference? Because these are the things you need to have set up.
So is this like beyond NPM?
So NPM is going to totally take care of all your node modules.
Right. All of your dependencies.
Right. Your node dependencies.
Right.
And then let's say you need Watchman, or you need Xcode. You need a specific Android version. You have a website that uses an image optimizer that needs to be installed. So like Docker is how people solve this now. They're like, here's
here's a Docker file build.
Here's everything, right? But we can't control people's environments in open source. We can't control people's environments as clients. But what we can do is we can sort of build a list and then say, if this comes up clean, your machine's good to go.
Right.
And so now it's kind of nice. And so like, CocoaPods, look, we got to make sure they got Ruby. We've got to make sure they've got the right CocoaPods, that it's not corrupt. And so it's basically, it's this middle layer that helps all these crazy tool chains that are required in environment X, environment Z. Maybe I'm building a Windows app, and I need to make sure you have these things. So what happens is, I could just type this command, and then it can give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down.
Right.
And then also, let's say I need to file a ticket. I could ask it for a report, and then it gives me like a GitHub friendly table that I can sort of like paste into my ticket too.
Oh, nice.
So the idea is here is like communication, being remote, we need to sort of, I can't look over somebody's shoulder or tell them, move, let me sit down at your computer and get you set up. Right. But now I have a way to say, hey, whatever this complains about, that's what you need on your machine.
Yep.
You don't have this installed, or you're in the wrong version of, we're working with Yarn 1.x and you're below that. So everything's going to go haywire.
Yep.
I think I have, there's some really funny things. I started taking a note of things that we wound up catching. Let's see. I don't have the notes right here, but let's see. There's some things that were just driving me absolutely insane. Like, somebody mentioned the other day that if you have, if you're using Yarn, it doesn't care if the Yarn lock file and your node modules are out of sync. Like, just catches all these weird issues. Or like NPM has gone up 5 levels recently, so to catch up with Yarn, of course. And so what happens is if you have an NPM lock file, which is like the latest, and it needs it, but if you have an old version of NPM, it's not updating that lock file for anybody. Right. And so if you're trying to enforce that you want your NPM lock file there, you have to enforce that NPM is at least of a certain version.
Yep.
And what's funny is like, who watches the watchers? It's really kind of meta at some point. So we just like to say, hey, snapshot my machine. It works on mine. How does the snapshot look when you run it across yours? And then it kind of says like, hey, these are the things we care about, and you're way off.
Yep. That's cool.
Yeah. It gets a little weird to describe that problem, but it's so funny. If anybody's ever like come across it, it's like, yes. Yeah. How do I solve this? Like, I love that one of these tools takes care of its domain, but it's getting hairy out there, buddy.
Well, it's funny because, I've solved this. Usually it's someone that I can go and sit down next to them, right? And so I run it and it's like, oh, you don't have this installed. Oh, you need these system libraries, off of apt or brew or whatever. And so, you can kind of figure that out. But yeah, remotely, oh, okay. Right. You want me to log into your machine and monkey with stuff and
right. And remember that, like, oh, the spread operator was added into like Node Core at 8, but not at 7.6. Like,
right.
Okay. I'm not remembering these things. Like, it's going to be a problem all over the place.
Yeah, that, or you went to the Node webpage and you installed the latest version of Node, and it turns out that it has some breaking API changes, right? So then you have to downgrade to whatever the client's using. Yeah, I've had that pain. So yeah,
hopefully this helps out with that. Definitely got some smart people looking into it and using it, and we're using it on all our projects. We're only going to keep making it better, but the blog post got like tons and tons of traffic, and just tooling has been my adventure lately. Building cool tools to make life fun.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
All right. Well, the last thing that we do on this show is picks. This episode is sponsored by Linode. Linode is offering listeners of this podcast a $20 credit, which is good for 4 free months at their lowest plan. Their plans start at 1 gigabyte of RAM for $5 a month. You can get your servers in any of their 10 data centers, and their high memory plans start at 16 gigabytes. Get a server running in under a minute. They do hourly billing with a monthly cap on all plans, and add-on services like backups, node balancers, Longview, etc. VMs for full control, running Docker containers, encrypted disks, VPNs, etc. You can run a private Git server. They provide native SSD storage, 200 gigabit network, and Intel E5 processors. They have 24/7 friendly support, even on holidays, and a 7-day money-back guaranteed. So go check them out at linode.com/JavaScriptJabber. I know that you're familiar with that from React Native Radio. Do you have some things you want to shout out about?
Absolutely. fortunately enough, we got to run the conference, the US React Native specific conference. So if everybody is about web, there's tons of web conferences out there, and they're really cool. I've been to quite a few of them. But if you're into building mobile, building Apple, building Windows, like just the sort of the React Native, like all the platforms that are kind of coming, also React Native Web, we're going to definitely have talks on that.
Right.
We throw the React Native conference in the US. It's Chain React, and it's July 11th, 12th, and 13th in Portland. And the CFP just opened up, and we've got some huge keynote speakers. We've announced Kent C. Dodds is going to be speaking, Tracy Lee.
Nice.
It's going to be a lot of fun. We did our first one last year, and it went amazingly, creepily well. Everybody loved it. It was beautiful. And we didn't really have a single blip that caused an issue. The biggest blip we had is one of the people who's mic'd up left the speakers area with the mic on them. We had to go chase them down and get it back, but we had 2 mics to go.
Right.
So we had 45 minutes to find him and get the microphone off of him. But it was really, really fun. So I'm looking forward to it. We are going to write, last year we wrote an open source app for the conference app. And we're going to write another one for this year coming up. It's just, it's an exciting time that we're surprised nobody was doing it. And now here we are, we're throwing it. And I mean, it's just been, everything came together. It's a huge success. So I definitely want to say, if you're interested, or if you want to be a speaker, CFP is open, and at least register for the mailing list. So that way we can let you know who's going to be there and what's going to happen.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
I'm going to jump in with a few picks. One of my picks is I ran across a movie trailer that I'm super excited about. And I think I've picked Ready Player One like 3 weeks in a row, so I'm not going to pick that movie trailer again. I freaking love that book. The other one is Avengers Infinity, and that's coming out in May. And freaking comic books, dude. I just, I'm super excited. So I'm actually, and I might need a little bit of help with this because I'm trying to figure out like the order that I need to play them in. But I think I'm going to do like a 2-day movie marathon before it comes out and just watch like all of the, all of the Avengers movies. So, all the Hulk movies and Iron Man movies and Captain America movies.
Skip the Hulk movies. Skip the Hulk movies.
I probably can. I haven't actually seen any of the Hulk movies.
Oh, man. Did you read the Infinity Wars and the Infinity Gauntlet comic books?
No, I didn't.
Oh, man. You could start there. That's
probably could.
That's a good spot. I mean, that sets the tone, because when those comic books came out, everybody was talking about them because just knowing what's coming up is really, really exciting.
Yep.
And so I highly recommend that. I definitely say skip the Hulk.
I think I might play him just to say I've seen him, but.
Yeah, the Thor, the most recent Thor Ragnarok kind of makes some serious jokes on the likability of the Hulk. Yeah. They did a good job. They really did a good job.
Well, the other thing is we could talk about this all day, I'm sure. They replaced Edward Norton with Mark Ruffalo, and I like Mark Ruffalo as the Hulk.
Yeah, definitely.
So, but like I said, I haven't seen the other movies, so I just didn't make it when they were coming out. I don't know why. So,
yeah, well, where they're going with this is, I mean, I'm glued to the screen, and I saw that between here and there, we have the Black Panther movie coming out.
Yes.
And he's obviously got a huge part. Well, he can't die at the end, right? He's in the trailer for the next movie. Good job, Marvel.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, it's pretty cool. I like that they're really bringing if they can pull the budget in to do Infinity War like Infinity War needs to do,
Right.
like it's gonna be it's gonna be the most expensive movie ever shot.
Well, it looks like they're bringing in all of the Marvel franchises that they own.
Yeah.
And so the only one that may not show up is X-Men, because I think they've licensed X-Men to somebody else.
Yeah, X-Men, all mutants are like domain of Fox, I think.
Yeah.
So anybody uses that's why the TV show says Inhumans.
Right. Yeah.
They can't use the word mutant. So
Yeah. So anyway, interesting stuff. But yeah. Anyway, and then the other thing that I'm going to pick, I just barely set up as we're recording this. This is going to come out in a few weeks, so old news by now. A forum for the devchat.tv podcast network. So if you go to forum.devchat.tv, you can join in. As we're talking, there aren't very many people in there, and I'm still setting up some of the categories and things, so it'll kind of grow into that. But we have that set up, and then if you want to get into the Slack room, you can go to Patreon. I think it's patreon.com/devchattv, or you can just go to devchat.tv and click on the donate Patreon link at the top. You have to donate more than $10, and then one of the comments that's available to contributors is a link to go sign up for the Slack channel. And if you want to cancel it after that, you can. Or if you want to stick around and keep sending us money, that would be awesome. And then finally, the last thing that I'm going to pick, and this is very relevant to our conversation, we're starting a React podcast. Yay!
Nice.
So we're going to do it the same format as JavaScript Jabber and React Native Radio, where we have guests, we talk as a panel, awesome stuff. And anyway, the Indiegogo is mostly just to see how interested people are. And, to basically cover the production costs for the first little while we find sponsors. So if you're interested in that kind of a thing, then go check it out. I'll have a link to that in the show notes. And I'm hoping to get that finished and up today. If you're also curious, we're starting podcasts at the same time on Vue.js and on Elixir. So if you're interested in those topics, you can go check them out as well. But yeah, that's it.
Dude, that is awesome. So I hope to be sometimes see you on the React, on the Elixir. We have a ton of people who did like Elixir TV. I can definitely. And then Vue.js is here in New Orleans. The Vue.js Conf that's coming up.
Oh, nice.
In I think like end of March, beginning of April. Awesome.
All right. Well, we'll go ahead and wrap this up. If people want to see what you're working on these days, do you have you said you've been blogging, so I'm assuming you have a blog or Twitter, GitHub, all that good stuff.
Oh yeah. All that's been blowing up pretty nice. So GantLaBorde.com. You can see all my silly icons. You can get a link to Medium. Definitely, if you haven't seen me on Medium, please subscribe. And then on Twitter, and then of course anywhere in the React Native universe. I'm usually at the conferences speaking. I'll probably be traveling a good bit. I think I might be even an MC at React Amsterdam. So definitely, if you see me, come up, say hi.
All right, sounds good.
Cool.
All right, well, we'll wrap this one up, and we'll catch everyone next week.
Bandwidth for this segment is provided by CacheFly, the world's fastest CDN. Deliver your content fast with CacheFly. Visit CACHEFLY.com to learn more.